It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
There have been, and I think some of the off-the-plan sales where maybe the buyers didn't do enough research at the time and they've been caught short because for whatever reason they've had to move the properties on and there just hasn't been the demand because people have so much choice. It all comes back to that, and if someone wanted to buy an apartment now, I could show them, at least sort of 30 or 40 different apartments that are around Bayside at the moment that are available that are either off the plan, just finished, or resales.
And that is Nick Johnson in Melbourne this morning, and welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Breakfast, your knowledge-based property podcast. We're here 7 days a week from all corners of the Australian housing property market. Middle of our working week too, Wednesday the 6th of August. Australian house prices, take a listen to this from CoreLogic. They have soared to nearly 14 times the average annual wage, a staggering jump from just 3 times a century ago. In 1975, it was 4.5 times. Gee, how we'd love, especially first-home buyers, to be living in 1975. Even when measured against median household disposable income, affordability has completely collapsed from 3 times the income in 1981 to 8 times now. And first-home buyers, boy oh boy, we know that you face this uphill battle borrowing, on average, $520,000, with Sydney and Melbourne median prices now sitting, of course, well above the $1 million mark. Let's catch up and go back into Melbourne and catch up with Nick Johnston. Welcome to the Real Estate Breakfast. Oh, to be living in 1975.
Thank you very much. Yeah, look, we have seen remarkable growth, haven't we? And it continues, and I'm maybe overly optimistic and bullish, but I think it's going to continue to grow because I can only talk about our area, which is Bayside, but certainly highly sought after and becoming more and more sought after.
Have you got children that have been trying to get onto the property ladder, or you probably know plenty of people that have?
Yeah, look, I have, and my children are in their mid-20s, and they've been fortunate enough to recently be able to acquire a home. But yeah, it certainly is very difficult. I remember I bought my first house in 1991 in Richmond, and it was $86,000, and I was able to save up about $20,000, and I had a mortgage of $63,000 and couldn't work out how I was ever going to pay it off or it was ever going to go up. So yeah, look, it's been incredible, but we have been lucky in recent years that we've been in a low interest rate environment, which looks like it's going to continue. I can't see it going up to the 17s and 20s that we had in early 90s, but it certainly is tough for kids. But I always say get in, and what is considered expensive today is cheap tomorrow.
The only thing with that logic is it's just not comparable. Like, you're sort of talking about your property back there in 1991. I mean, horses for courses. It is just not an even playing field. And good to hear that your children have got onto the property ladder. But man, oh man, it is such a uphill battle. And I do want to talk about Melbourne because it has been one of the least affordable capitals for property resales in early 2025. But Bayside, man, has that stood out as a top performer. And perhaps for those people that might not know Bayside, just give us a little bit of a breakdown on Bayside.
Yeah, well, I suppose our market is pretty much from Elwood through to Parkdale, so all that's 20 minutes south of the city. It's just a terrific area, and I again, maybe overly optimistic, but I think it's always been undervalued as compared to the eastern suburbs, Toorak and Malverns and Prahran, which are closer to the city but are sort of landlocked and built up. We're on the beach on the beautiful Port Phillip Bay. We've got, and the growth in it recently has been spectacular, but we've got great infrastructure. We've got great restaurants now. Great private schools. Some of the best private schools in Melbourne are in the Bayside suburbs. We've got a terrific transport system, a 20-minute train ride from Bayside suburbs into the city. Clear air. It's just a wonderful place to bring up a family. And there's some beautiful homes. in the area, there's a great mix of, apartments, flats, homes, units, villa units. It's got everything, but it is a big area now. If you look at the commercial side of Bayside, there's very few shops for lease. So retailers, if something comes up for lease, they're snapped up pretty quick. So I think they see, the retailers that look at future growth, I think they see great growth potential in these Bayside suburbs.
Clear air. Nick, what a selling point that is, eh? Now, according to CoreLogic's latest pain and gain report, Bayside sellers, and if you are living in Bayside and you are listening to this podcast, you'll know exactly what we're talking about because you have made a median profit of $608,000. That's quite staggering.
Yeah, that is staggering, and I wasn't aware of that figure until the other day when it came out. But again, it doesn't surprise me, and I think we have been undervalued for a long time. So, and I think it's going to continue to grow. I think the next 6 to 12 months, we're going to see another little jump in prices in Bayside. And we've just seen, even in the last couple of weeks, there seems to be a fair bit more enthusiasm from local buyers and also interstate buyers, because it's been reported everywhere that Victoria's had the slowest growth in real estate in the last few years since COVID. So a lot of experts are suggesting that now is a great time to invest in Victoria and less broadly speaking in Bayside suburbs of Melbourne.
We are talking to Nick Johnston there in Brighton, in Bayside, in Melbourne. When we come back, I want to find out what has been happening with the local apartments, because there has been plenty to report in 2025 in Melbourne's apartment market. We'll talk about that after this.
Get insider tips from industry professionals and level up your real estate game by unlocking the secrets of successful real estate transactions.
And good morning to you, Tim. Welcome into the Real Estate Breakfast. First off, what has been surprising you in the 2025 year of real estate there in the lower North Shore?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. We've seen a few trends over the last probably 6 to 12 months with demand for larger apartments, and particularly with families moving out from a family house, downsizing and wanting large 3 bedrooms and 4 bedrooms. We've never really had a big market for this, but it's quite surprising that as people get older, might have children at university coming and going, or they have guests coming to stay with them regularly. There's actually quite a demand for large 3 bedrooms and 4 bedroom apartments, which is a new trend that we're seeing, but it's becoming quite popular. I think that's largely because there are downsizers. There's also younger families that just don't have time for the maintenance and the quarter-acre block that everyone sort of aspired to. Busy professionals often like to have the size, but not the maintenance that goes along with a house of that sort of size. So it's an interesting trend that we're seeing, and I think the developers are responding to it. They're building larger 3 bedrooms with big living spaces, large master bedrooms, and incorporating the 4 bedrooms, which have been quite popular in a project we've recently done in Willoughby.
And right now it is time for another property tip, and recently we were talking to Simone there in Orange in New South Wales. And Simone, you've got a property tip for us this morning.
I do. So this tip is for all the investors out there. So if you're looking at purchasing a property, I always suggest getting a second opinion to check the rental figure that you're being quoted. So I offer an investor support service, which is really targeted for owners that are out of Orange, that helps to provide a little bit more of a detailed information and check the figures that you've been given, and also give you a little bit more of a background on the property, because sometimes agents don't always disclose, all of the information, particularly about an area, or if there's any housing commission or, future developments planned. So it's always best to make sure you have all that information at your fingertips so you know you're making the best investment purchase.
Hang on, did you say that sometimes agents don't disclose things? I find that hard to believe.
Unfortunately, yes, it's one of those things that was really needing to get stamped out of the industry. I think, agents are there to help educate, and our job is to, educate, inform, so everyone can make the right, choices. That's what we're here for, to lead you along the way, not to just, sell the first property or any property that you go through.
Remember, we are not a real estate company. We are 100% all about increasing your awareness and knowledge for buying and selling properties.
And it is a Real Estate Wednesday. We are in Melbourne with Nick. Apartments, what has been happening in the Melbourne market, particularly where you are? You've just been talking about Bayside, etc. How have those apartments been performing? Not as well as we know as the houses.
No, definitely not. Look, I think it's going to find its level. There's been probably an oversupply in recent years, and we're seeing they have come back quite a bit. So it's really a two-tiered market in houses and land are going a lot better than apartments. But they'll find their level. I just think there was so many being built and a lot of them were sold off the plan and got really good results. A lot of those resales now, they're struggling to get what they paid for them back. But again, I do see growth in it. I think it's just got to find equilibrium, find a level where they're considered good value. There's such a huge range of apartments that are being built. You know, there's some of the smaller 1-bed and 2-bedders that are cheaper, and then there's the absolute luxury that's, you know, beachfront and that sort of thing. So huge range of apartments, but definitely apartments have been a lot harder just purely on supply and demand in the last couple of years.
Have you heard of some of these really bad luck stories? Because they have been reported here in Melbourne where people have lost massive amounts of money purely because they just have not been able to hold and wait for that correction that you're talking about to take place.
Yeah, look, it's unfortunate. The timing's everything in real estate, isn't it? There have been, and I think some of the off-the-plan sales where maybe the buyers didn't do enough research at the time and they've been caught short because for whatever reason they've had to move the properties on and there just hasn't been the demand because people have so much choice. It all comes back to that. And if someone wanted to buy an apartment now, I could show them, you know, at least sort of 30 or 40 different apartments that are around Bayside at the moment that are available that are either off the plan, just finished, or resales.
All right, well, we'll wrap it up there, Nick. Great to catch up with you for the first time on the Real Estate Breakfast. You're representing areas like Bayside and Brighton, etc. Enjoy your Wednesday, and thanks for coming on to the Real Estate Breakfast.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Each week, we bring you in-depth real estate discussions, including inspiring stories from homeowners, knowledgeable real estate professionals and economists. Whether you're a buyer, seller, or just a real estate enthusiast, we are your ultimate property podcast.
We'll actually be spending a night sleeping in our cars to raise awareness of the forgotten women. These are our aunts, they're our mothers, they're our sisters, they're our daughters. They're people just like us that find themselves challenged when it comes to affordable housing.
Now, I was going to ask you, have you ever slept in your car, maybe as a teenager when you were super young, but hey, that is a completely different experience to doing that as an adult. But what a great way to sort of highlight the fact that this is just how difficult it is for these people.
Yeah, so have I ever slept in my car? Look, not intentionally. And I think this is one of the reasons why we really wanted to participate in this fundraising event. It's not easy to sleep in a car, especially when you may be in an environment that may be unfamiliar to you. You may not know the neighbourhood.
However, people do get excited when there's a rate drop, and it always stimulates the real estate market. But then often it quite pushes up the prices to a point where you negate that win that you just had with the rate cut. So I would always suggest people have a look at the market and what they can afford at the time, because that's the best time to buy. I wouldn't wait particularly for a rate cut.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.